A very good evening, Zimbabwe. You are listening to Studio 7 from the Voice of America on Monday, January 12th, 2015. And this is Live Talk. I'm Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kip Stube.
And tonight on Live Talk, we are going to talk about by-elections in Mount Darwin West and also in Chirumanzu, Zimbabwe constituency.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you back.
And as usual, Live Talk goes out to Zimbabwe on our 909 medium wave frequency and on the 4930, 5940 and 15455 kilohertz shortwave, Monday through Friday at 8:30 p.m.
On the internet, you can find us at www.voazimbabwe.com, www.voashona.com, and www.voindebele.com.
The MDC is not going to participate in these two by-elections which have been promulgated by Robert Mugabe. Our position is very clear. We are not going to participate.
Isivumelwano esilaso njengebandla ngesilungu abathi ngama-resolution ukuthi sathi thina sizancintisisa kulo lonke ukhetho olwenzakalayo eZimbabwe ngoba silibandla elidinga ukuthola amandla okukhokhela ilizwe ezigabeni ezitshiyeneyo lokho kusenzakala ngaphansi ungakuthola kuphela ngokhetho
ayo akwete provision yomthemo yoyo inotoaplya izvezvi vari kuti izosiaplya kana pazoya running mate havasi kuzwisisa ende ndino urombo kuti havafaniri kunge vari vanhu vakafunda saizvozvo vanotaza kunzwisisa zviri pachena zvakanyorwa nomutemo. Running mate haina constituency, haimbogari yamirira constituency. Saka mutemo uyo haungazoapply pana running mate uye running mate asingamiriri constituency. Plus zakare running mate haaappointiwi napresident. Unotoita vice president kana waita running mate by virtue yokuti wamanya napresident mose saka vote yokuti president awini.
Once again, thanks for joining us. You are listening to Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are going to talk about by-elections to be held in constituencies once held by former Vice President Joyce Mujuru and her predecessor Emmerson Mnangagwa.
President Robert Mugabe has proclaimed March 27th as the date for holding by-elections in constituencies that fell vacant after the elevation of Mnangagwa and Mrs. Mujuru.
Of course, legal experts are divided on interpreting the provision that Mr. Mugabe has used for that proclamation. And to add to the confusion, the main opposition parties are saying that they are not going to participate in these elections until President Robert Mugabe's ruling ZANU-PF institutes electoral reforms. Gibbs.
To join the discussion, phone us directly at this number 001-202-619-2077 and we'll call you back. That number again 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp and our number is 1-202-465-0318. The WhatsApp number again 1-202-465-0318. Ye kunjalo ke mfowethu.
Onguka Gibbs nasi tinoti tinge tichitarisa nezvesarudzo dziri kunzi nemutungamiri wenyika ngadziitwe musi wa27 kukadzi ku Chirumanzu Zimbabwe ku Midlands Province kotiwo ku Mount Darwin West ku Mashonaland Central asi pane kutaura kuripo vamwe vari kuti aiwa zvekuti paitwe sarudzo kana mutedzeri wemutungamiri wenyika asingasiya chigaro zvinofanira kutanga kushanda tingangoti makore 10 anotevera ndofunga kwasara 9 manje tingoramba edu tichiti 10 vamwe vachiti aiwa zvaakutoshanda iko zvino asi imwe nyaya iri kunetsa ndeyekuti vanopikisa vari kuti havasi kuzopinda musarudzo idzodzi nekuti havadi kupinda musarudzo dzavari kuti idzo unenge uchitoziya kuti ndiani akahwina kuenda kutamba bhora uchiziva kuti timu yakati yawina kudhara. Ndozvavari kuti hatisi kuda kunge tichiita, asi vamwe vezano vari kuti aiwa vanhu ava vanenge vachitya sarudzo, ndosaka vachiti hatipinde musarudzo dzinenge dzichiitwa. Saka toda kunzwa kubva kunemi vateereri kuti munoti kudii nenyaya iyi, munoona sei nyaya yeMDC yekuti havasi kuda kupinda musarudzo idzodzi kusvika zvinhu zvavandudzwa munyaya dzesarudzo. Gibbs.
Yebo kambe Zulu kandaba lingalithona njani khonapho lapho elikhona ngemakhaya thina ngapha hayi siyaphila sibula kumagama. Silethemba lokuthi impela viki yenu kade inhle sibili. Kodwa ke ngapha ke eWashington kuyabanda. Xa ungaphuma phandle kunganozwane lungene phakathi kwefridge. So ke njengokutsho kwaBlessing Zulu esikukhangelayo lamhla isikhangela ukhetho lolo osokuthiwa kumele lube khona eMount Darwin West khona ngale kwakubambe khona Mrs Joyce Mjuru, bese kubuya eChirumanzi Zimbabwe khona ngale kwakulo mnumzana uEmerson Nangagwa. Siyakwazi ababili laba abafakwa ke esikhundleni zokuthi babe ngo-vice president. Loba kunjalo siyakwazi ke ukuthi uMrs Mjuru siwakhitshwa phela ngasekho khona ngale, kodwa ke ukhetho bathi kumele lwe phambili. Sizwile njalo ukuthi kuloko incwajana nje okukhithiweyo ku-Government Gazette ngumongameli Robert Mugabe othi ukhetho lolu kumele lube khona mhla ka-27 March. Sizwile njalo abacubungula ezomthetho besithi okwenziwayo lapho ngana kusikho, kodwa abanye bathi yikho kanye, but sifuna ukuthi sizwe la ngengcwethu ukuthi ziyathini ngalokho. Kunjalo nje sizwile ukuthi i-MDC bese le MDC renewal team zithi zona zingeke zingena ukhetho lolu inkomo ingazala umuntu noma kanjani, bangeke bakwenze khonokho. So ke sifuna ukuzwa ngani Zulu kandaba ukuthi pho kuthiwani nxa sokunje sokuyingqaba ngqoza phela mfowethu.
Ongu zvakaita manyama amire nerongo ingama ngqoza.
Yeah. Kuthiwani
Manyama amire nerongo.
Ngizayizama, it was the end of the program, right?
I think we have our two guests, Gibbs. Who do we have?
Yes, we've got Mr. Pulu, who is a human rights lawyer and is based in Bulawayo. Mr. Pulu, good evening and welcome to the program.
Good evening, Gibbs, and good evening to the listeners as well.
Thank you so much. We are told that we have lost one of our yes.
Guess that is Mr. Dewa Mavinga of the Human Rights Watch, but we'll be calling him back. So let's start with Mr. Pulu. Mr. Pulu, just briefly, we talked earlier on to Professor Lovemore Maduku about this proclamation by Mr. Mugabe, and Professor Maduku is of the opinion that Mr. Mugabe is misleading himself because that provision that the vice president's seat will fall vacant after 90 days only applies after 10 years when there's a running mate. And we also talked to one of the architects of the Constitution, ZANU-PF's Paul Mangwana. Mr. Mangwana said that, in fact, it is Mr. Maduku who is actually misinterpreting the law. What is your understanding of this provision? First, Mr. Pulu, before we talk about by-elections.
You know, my initial take on this provision was that Professor Maduku's interpretation may be incorrect. But, you know, after listening to colleagues and debating it, I think his reading is very correct. And in fact, if you look at it, one must applaud him for reading the text of that section very, very carefully. I myself had been misled to say that the appointment of the I don't know whether it was intended when the Constitution was drafted. I was there, but it says that the appointment of a vice president must happen. It must happen immediately after the election. If you read the specific wording, it must happen immediately after not any election, but after the general election. And so, as we stand here now, you know, there is no general election. So then, how do you go on to make that appointment? So, Professor is taking a strict interpretation of what is there. Mangwana's interpretation as well, which I bought in the beginning, but now I doubt. But it's very difficult again to say that it is a ridiculous interpretation, because it's possible for the court to actually buy that interpretation if they use another avenue of interpreting the provision. If they don't say what is actually in the text, but they say what was intended, because then what happens if something, say the vice president dies in office or resigns and so forth? Are we saying that the country should then go ahead without any, replacement of that vice president? That applies to the first vice president. Well, to the vice president who was there, because there's no first vice president now, but Tumchur. There's another argument again where Professor is right. The appointment of the other vice president, Mpogo, is not conceivable if you read that constitution, because if two had been appointed immediately after the elections, then perhaps we would be saying it's possible to have a replacement and have two now. So the president had to choose whether he's appointing one or two immediately after the elections, and not now to decide that he's going to add another one. So perhaps the election of Mchu, in my view, it's arguable that it's possible to fill the vacancy. But the other vice president, that's where, they're able to explain how they now have two vice presidents. So it's interesting, and ultimately it is the Constitutional Court that is going to lend an interpretation.
Thank you, Mr. Pulu, for that brilliant analysis. Of course, they say compromise is the best and cheapest lawyer. Let's see if Mr. Mavinga agrees with you, Gibbs.
Mr. Mavinga, are you on the line?
Hello, yes.
And that is definitely Mr. Tewa Mavinga. Welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Gibbs, and a blessing. Thank you.
Now, how do you interpret what is going on in Zimbabwe right now? There's a lot that is being said.
Well, what is clear, and I think most Zimbabweans will now realize, is that the law is a political instrument that is used primarily selectively to meet political ends or to suit political positions. So if you look at what is happening with the parliamentary seat for former Vice President Joyce Mujuru, and why all this time suddenly government realizes that it has an obligation to declare that seat vacant simply because she has fallen out of favor, it does indicate what we've always been saying, that the law is being used selectively, is being used to persecute opponents or perceived opponents of government, and in this particular case is quite clear. This is why there appears to be a rush to fill these two parliamentary seats for former Vice President Joyce Mujuru and current Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, and not looking at the other issues existing that require urgent attention in terms of electoral reforms, in terms of creating a level playing field for genuine political participation and genuine political competition. At the moment, there is no such thing as a genuine political competition, because the political field is steeped heavily in favor of those that control the institutions such as the Justice Administration Institution, which is actually now an injustice administration institution.
Thank you, Mr. Mavinga. And as they say, a good lawyer knows the law, and a great lawyer knows the judge. Zimbabwe for you. And we also have Mr. Morris Gweja. Mr. Morris Gweja is a political analyst, and he usually leads towards ZANU-PF. Mr. Gweja, good evening.
Good evening. How are you today?
We are doing great, and thanks for joining us. Now, Mr. Ngweja, there is this by-election. Of course, I was talking to these two lawyers on the interpretation of the law, but also to add to the confusion, we talked to the MDC formation led by Mr. Trangirai and the other MDC renewal team led by Mai Holland, if my interpretation is right. And also, they've indicated that they are not going to participate in these by-elections until there are electoral reforms. What is your take on this?
Well, my take really is you talk of confusion, which is rightly prevailing, and I wouldn't much on the legal aspect because I'm not a lawyer, but what I know, the little that I know about law is all about interpretation, and at the end of the day, what matters is the one in authority, how that person interprets it. That is what so many lawyers arguing in courts. It's all about interpretation. As for the by-elections, they are actually long overdue because we cannot have elements like the former Vice President Joyce Mjuru anywhere near any office as important as being a legislator. So I think, in my view, they are long overdue, those by-elections. They have to be made. And if you also consider Vice President, who is also the acting president, Comrade Mnangagwa's plight, he has so many duties that are facing him, and I think it is the very right thing to do to have those by-elections done so that people from that constituency are not prejudiced.
Thank you, Gibbs.
Now we've got some messages that are trickling in. Blessing on Facebook. We've got Fabian Murumbi who writes, "Where will the government get the money to hold these elections? The country is currently broke." Then we've got Mokwena Daniels who writes, "If independent candidates are allowed, then Joyce Mjuru can contest and win it because of the support she has in that area." Then we've got Love Mo who writes, "Po po 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 po."
Po killer.
Yeah, po 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 po. We want proper elections and not this circus. Then we've got James who writes, This won't help anyone. Buy drugs for the poor people of Zimbabwe." Then we've got Munyaradzi Tlanganiso who writes, "Why were these elections not held long back in Mount Darwin?" Big question there, right? Then we've got Temba Nyanga who writes, "Let them fill all the vacant seats of those that were sacked. It must be like starting afresh. Why do they want to buy it bit by bit? They want to first build support. No, please." Then we've got Willard who only sent a message by saying, "Okay." Then of what Washington, he says Zimbabwe is no more. I don't know whether you've got something on WhatsApp.
We have on WhatsApp several messages. David says to us on the other side, it's a non-event. Whether they do them or not, it won't give any legit to their failing government. Peter says all political parties must unite and boycott this election. It won't be free and fair. Tsitsi says, "Ko ivo amai mujuru vanobvumidzwa here kukwikwidza pasarudzo idzi." I think that's why we have Mr. Pulu and Mr. Mavinga to do the interpretation for us. Baklandi says, "Why boycott? They are not serious parties. They forget that they have no power to set dates and detect political pace in Zimbabwe. No matter what MDC should go and contest, they should not hide, giving silly excuses because the politics is their business. That's their business to contest every vacant seat in parliament or at a district level. It's like a bread company saying we are no longer going to sell bread, but we are still open." Wow. Innocent says, "This is a waste of government resources and money. Let the government pay its workers, starting with the pending bonuses." Nicodemus says, "This is just another addition to the many inadequacies of a pseudo-quasi-regime masquerading as a democracy. Lord help us from a true son of the soil." Clifford M says, "The opposition is right." And of course, Jabulani anoti sarudzo idzi adzina zvadzinoreva kana pasina kuvandudzwa mutemo. Hamungamhanyire nevanhu vakahwina kudhara. Hamungamhanyi nevanhu vakahwina kudhara. Iyo ZANU-PF kana ichiziva kuti inohwina, ngaitovaedza zvinodiwa, ngaiteedzera zvinodiwa nemutemo wenyika bedzi. Ko vai vasingadi kuvandudza kana ivo vachiziva kuti vanodiwa nevanhu. Sibanda anoti iye izvi hazvibatsiri kukwidzana neZANU-PF pasarudzo idzi. Vakatohwina kare nehuori. Manasa says the vacant posts must be occupied because the people in those constituencies need a representative who they can tell their needs. Unfortunately, the people's needs will always be ignored. Vacant or occupied, that is another problem. That is Manasa Gibbs.
I think we've got several questions that are coming out of these messages.
Yes.
One of them is directed to Baba Pulu. Ngesintu mfowethu. Omunye ubuzile lapho tikati ukhetho kwakuhlalelweni lungenziwa uMrs Mjuru esesese office.
Indaba yama by elections gives siyazi ukuthi mina ngomunye walaba abathi ngesikhathi o-Abednego Pepe labo Njabuliso Mkhuni labo Nomeli kwahlala isikhathi eside ama-constituencies amaningi engenama-representatives ingawuthi kwakungenziwa ama-by-elections kwahanjwa ekhoti ngomunye wabantu bathi kungaba nama-vacancies kumele kwenziwe ama-by-elections ngesikhathi kulandelwa i-constitution ngalezo sikhathi sazisa ekhoti upresident uMgabe ephikisa abalamali ukuthi benze ama-by-elections indaba leyo sayiwina ama-by-elections lawo kenziwanga ngesikhathi kwaze kwathi sekufike okukhulunywa nguDiwa Mavinga yavumelana lawo sekufike bona ukuthi selefuna base besenza ama-by-elections this year bebelokhu besenza ama-by-elections ku-contestwa abanye bedliwa and so forth kodwa ama-political parties amanye athi thina kasoze singene kulolu thetho ngenxa yokuthi i-ground yakhona ingani ilomehlelo omunye udla emqansweni omunye ihlohla phansi ama-by-elections lawa njengoba bungwenya ekhuluma asesenziwa ukuthi ngesikhalangazi ngathi basudze umjuru so ayenzelwa ama-political motive kodwa-ke angeke ngithi kungenziwa ama-by-elections ngoba umthetho uthi kumele kube nama-by-elections isizathu sokuwenza ukuthi bona bayakhetha beshiya abakufunayo belahla abangakufuniyo so nxa singakana ilizwe ngalolu hlobo I think kwehluleka kakhulu kokwenza ukuthi ilizwe lijombe kangaka lingabi le mali lingabi lingarani njengamanye amazwe.
Yes, akuzwa kakhulu ke mnumzana Pulu. So Baba Pulu ngizayenza translation oncane. I can imagine if I misquote a lawyer, right? that can be something else, right?
Yeah.
So what
it's a lawsuit.
Terrible. So what Mr. Pulu is saying is that he's reminding Zimbabweans actually of the Abednego Pepe and Njabuliso Mkhuni scenario, where the government had to make its own choice. You know, they were pressing, lawyers were pressing for the by-elections to be held. So the government took its time and then the elections on their own kind of pace. So he says, this is not right. So at the end of the day, the government should not do some of these things. So then he ended up by saying, perhaps this is designed to cripple Mrs. Mjuru's political ambitions. Maybe.
Interesting. Vamavinga muripo iri parunari.
Hongu ndiripo.
Muteerera abvunza kuti mai Mjuru vanokwanisa here kukwikwidza musarudzo nekuti zvimwe zvatiri kuverenga ndezvekuti iko zvino vava pamudya ndigere yakangofanana nemunhu ari kushanda ari kumukira kubasa sezviri kuitwa navaMnangagwa vanenge vachipiwawo mari yavo yemudya ndigere nekudaro zviri kunzi vakwanise kunge vachikwikwidza musarudzo dzakadai kana kuti kana vachinge vakwikwidza zvinenge zvirova kuti vanenge vasingapiwe mari yemugoyo wavo vanokwanisa here kukwikwidza zvinofamba sei? Vamavinga, I think we
that's
have
a tough
line there, but of course, Vamavinga.
Oh, it's gone.
Inenge iri kutinetsei tichaedza kuti tizodzokere zvakare kuna Vamavinga. Ngatidzoke kwamuri vangwenya mambotaura imi kuti mai Mjuru avafanira kunge vachitomboswebera padhuze nemasimba. Sei muri kudaro kana munhu asati atombotongwa abatwa kana nemhosva?
Apa tikutaurira nenyaya nokuti nyaya yavari kupomerwa isi nyaya yekutamba nayo, inyaya yakaipisisa yekurongera kubvuta chigaro chemutungamiri wenyika nesimba. Inyaya yakaipisisa yekuti kuri kubato maprinciples ebato reZANU-PF munhu akadaro haatombofaniri kuonekwa kusvikira apaturwa mata kuona kuti kana kuri kuti anoitwa suspended kana kuri kuti anozodzoka zvekare kuzopinda mubato ndizvozvo, asi pari zvinezvi anenge asingatombofaniri kuonekwa ipapo. Tozoona zvekare kuti zviri kutaurwa neMBC zvekuti havasi kuda kukwikwidza nemareforms avari kutaura inyaya yekuti munhu avanotsigira mai Mjuru, saka vari kutya kuti vakada kukwikwidza zvinoita sekunge vari kuwirirana nezviri kuitwa neZANU-PF ekushora mai Mjuru. Tozoona vakada kuenda kwaChirumanzu vanonyatsoziva kuti havana kana mukana, vanodyiwa nokuseni. Saka ndo nyaya iri kuitika yekuti mareforms api avanozotanga kutaura nhasi.
Mareforms vagara vachitaura vagwenya sarudzo dzese dzaitika kubva 2000
asi vachikwikidza vachikwikwidza zvakadaro.
Saka
manyawana vari kuda kutaura nhasi ndaro.
Very interesting, Mr. Pulu. I would like you to respond to that and maybe go further to tell us whether Mrs. Mjuru can contest. But can you respond, Mr. Pulu, to what Mr. Ngonya said?
In my view, you see, I hadn't sat down to look at what the provisions say, but I think for perhaps, it's something we can debate.
Yeah.
But this is a senior government official going on retirement and retiring on the same basis, that, she will be getting paid, according to her last position that she held in government. Now, if she were to go on and hold the office of the president, for example, if she retires, she would get the tax of her last office, which would be the president. Now, if she went on then and got employed somewhere or was assigned another junior job, perhaps the argument would be that she would no longer be entitled to that payment, that retirement, because her last job in government would not be that of vice president. We saw that argument with being raised in South Africa regarding Montlante and the reason why he was not going to take up another job or to vie for any other post and perhaps lose and so forth. But look, I think that there's merit to the argument that she has to consider all those things. She also has to consider whether she wants to really exacerbate the wrath of her political parties and peers. And also she has to consider whether she wants to leave her political party, because it may not follow that because of the tips that are happening, she will want to leave ZANU-PF. But certainly as a citizen, she is entitled. There's nothing in the Constitution that bars her from contesting, whether as a member of ZANU-PF, unless the Constitution of ZANU-PF bars her, or whether as an independent or as a member of another party. But certainly, I think it borders on ridiculousness. I think Mr. Ngonya actually has no analysis. I think he's just playing at this level, which is saying, look, I'm doing analysis. There's no way you can say that the MDCs are calling for reforms because they support Mrs. Mjuru. Because the MDCs have always called for reforms. In fact, the MDC renewal in particular has not participated in it, has stated clearly that we will not be participating in by-elections. Monzora has announced about, some time back last year, towards the end of last year, that before this tiff between Mjuru and her party happened, that they will no longer be participating in elections without any reforms. The civil society has been calling for these reforms for a very long time. And certainly this has nothing to do with what is happening between ZANU-PF and Mrs. Mjuru. And also to suggest that a citizen, once that citizen is having troubles in her party, or people hate her, is not entitled to hold any government office, is also ridiculous. In fact, we have Mnangagwa, who is the vice president right now. He was accused of the same thing before within ZANU-PF. And when he is not arguing that Mnangagwa should not be where he is, certainly I think his analysis is devoid of any effort at all. And certainly, if Zimbabwe is a better place, we certainly need better analysis, whether it is one way or the other.
Thank you. Mr. Mavinga,
May I quickly respond, please?
Okay, regai tingoti vamavinga yanga yakata todzoka kwamuri futi vangwenya. Vamavinga tatati vanokwanisa here kuti vapinde musarudzo mai Mjuru?
Ndinobvumirana nomzamo Pulu zvavataura kuti panenge pane inyaya yekuti mai Mjuru vanofanira kufunga kuti votora zvipi vari pachipanera yavaiswa nezANU-PF kuti nerimwe rutivi mari yemudzigandigere inofanira kuti idimurwe kana vati vava kuda kupinda zvakare munhandare vava kutosiya mari iyoyo yemudzigandigere kana asi pamutemo chaipo hapana chinovakonesa kuti vapinde munhandare. Chinonyanyisa kuvakonesa inyaya dzezvematongerwo enyika dzekuti vazvipira here kuti
Mr. Mavinga, we'll come back to you. Please stay on the line. Mr. Pulu and Mr. Ngonya, our radio listeners, unfortunately, we end here, but we are streaming live. So go to www.voazimbabwe.com and press on Live Talk. This is Blessing Zulu.
And I'm Kips Dube saying stay tuned to Zimbabwe.
Nemuteereri wedu vasangoma rambai muri parunari. For those of you who are just joining us, good evening, and this is Studio 7 Live Talk. And tonight on Live Talk, we are talking about by-elections that are going to be held in Chirumanzu, Zimbabwe, and also in Mount Darwin West. Of course, President Robert Mugabe has proclaimed March 27th as the day that the by-elections will be held. This is to replace Vice President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who has been elevated to that position, and also former Vice President Joyce Mujuru. And Gibbs.
And it appears as if, Blessing, the two formations of the MDC have said they're boycotting the elections. So at the end of the day, it's all up to them because they're saying, you know, the playing field is not level. So I had one of the contributors here saying that it's like playing on a field where the other gate is facing, you know, downwards, as if, you know, you just shoot from nowhere, then you score. You see what I mean? So it's really tricky. And if you wish to join the show right now, phone us directly at this number, 001-202-619-2077. That number again, 001-202-619-2077. You can also send us a message on WhatsApp. The number is 1-202-465-0318. Yes, kube kulowa nkolo.
Vamavhinga pedzisai tione tisatatora muteereri wedu.
Mai Mujuru vaiswa pachipanera neZANU-PF nekuti vanofanira kufunga kuti chavanoda imari yemudzigandigere here nekurarama chinyararise vasingarwisani neZANU-PF kana kuti vopinda munhandare votatsurana neZANU-PF mumakwikwi vakazvimiririra kana kuti vari nhengo yerimwe bato. Asi chiripo chatinoziva ndechekuti vachateverwa zvikuru sei neZANU-PF ichishandisa mitemo yakasiyana-siyana, ichishandisawo vanhu vanoiteerera vari mukati zvemitemo. Saka vane ndo dambudziko ravainaro, asi pamutemo chaipo vanogona kuita sarudzo ivo pavo kuti vanoda here kupinda vosiya mudzigandigere, vosiya ZANU-PF kana kuti kwete.
Asi pamudzigandigere racho pane chiripo here kana kuti kungotaurawo hedu kuti mudzigandigere vamavhinga?
Pamutemo kana uchitevedzerwa hongu panenge paine chiripo chekuti vanenge vachipuwa mari inoringana nemutevedzeri wemutungamiri wenyika pari zvino anenge aripo, kureva kuti mugove unopuwa vaMnangagwa navamupoko ndo vanofanira kuwanawo. Asi imwe nzira iripo yekuti ZANU-PF inogona kuita zveukebekebe kuda kuti vavatorere mari yemudzigandigere, kuvapomera mhosva nekuvabvumburudza kana kuvakanda mutorongo vozopfumazve voti kwete hazvichakodzere kuti mupuwe mari yemudzigandigere. Asi iko zvino pasina chati chaitika, pasina humwe utsinye hwaitwawo havo nemusangano wavo weZANU-PF, vanofanira kuti vapuwe mari yavanga vachingowana semutevedzeri wemutungamiri wenyika kusvika pakupera kweupenyu hwavo.
Tinotenda vamavhinga. Regai titore muteereri wedu vasangoma makadii? Sangoma. Okay. Makadii zvenyu vasangoma?
Tinosunga makadiniwo.
Aiwa, tiripo. Nhasi tiri kutaura nezvesarudzo. Muri kuona sei?
Right, totanga tiri pana Mai Mujuru. Mai Mujuru avo paitwa fast track yokuti vadhingugwe, poitwa fast track yokukwidza Mnangagwa. Tozoti pepiri Mai Mujuru akada kumutsa musoro chinotanga kutoregwa kana toti somenza sose plus rinobva raiswa vanhu nhasi rovata raivhidiwa vakangoanaunsa kuti ndafoma pati vanototanga kugwa plus ndo chinhu chokutanga vakariwanaka nezano, saka ndo Mujuru arichaita. Right, tobva ipapo toenda kuna nabi vedu ava veMDC ava vakativo
vakavona pfungwa dzavo dzichifanana vana Wilson Ncube nana Biti pfungwa dzavo dzabva dzatosiyana vasati vapedza chibvumirano chachina mazuva achasainiwa asi umwe uti ndopinda musarudzo umwe uti handichapindi saka vanoratidzika kuti sungano yavo haina mberi kwainosvika.
Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru vasangobva kupinda muchirongwa chedu. Tinotenda zvikuru. Of course, what Sangoma is saying is that it appears the marriage between the MDC renewal team and the MDC led by Professor Washman Ncube is troubled from the start because, of course, the MDC led by Professor Washman Ncube is saying that they have a standing resolution that they will participate in all elections. And on the other hand, the MDC renewal team is saying they are not going to participate until there are reforms. And of course, he's also saying that the problem for Maim Juru might be that of patronage. He's saying she risks losing all her properties should she go against ZANU-PF Gibbs.
Mr. Ngwenya, you wanted to react. We know that you've been itching to go. This is your time now. Say it, Bob.
Yes. First of all, I wanted to point out to Mr. Pulu that what I'm saying is MDC contested elections using the current laws. What reforms are they talking about? That was my question. Then the second thing is, Mr. Pulu should not forget that the party is very important in this whole issue. The party can recall whichever candidate, like what you saw in South Africa, Comrade Mbeki being recalled by the party. This is something that he cannot undermine. That about hatred from it's about hatred from the party or whatever the party decides is not important in this whole issue. It is very important because she was in that office due to the party seat.
Yes, siyakuzwa kakhulu ke baba Ngwenya. Ungakatshana ukuthi ke start umlaleli. Baba Dinkomo kunjani eSouth?
Ayisefrenye baba.
Hayi mbijana mnyaka omutsha phela.
Yes, sesungenile.
Yes, ungena nje kule nkulumo eziningi kweZimbabwe,
Yeah, ezingapheliyo, ezingasilethi ngalutho.
Ungathini kodwa walolo?
Hayi, akulalutho baba vele engalutsho. Ngaze kutshintshwe kufaka ubani vele sibuyele emuva. Ama position wala okhuluma ngawo into vele zingabeletheli ilizwe vele soze lithole lutho. Akuseze vele unless kuze kuphume bonke laba abaphambili lapho kube labantu abatsha abangabusa ngcono kulalokho kukhona. Abantu bakithi bayahlupheka ukuthi nje sitshone nje sithi hayi kuzaba lalokhu ngamaphupho nje angasoza avuka vele sebenza. Ayikho vele into engenzakala unless laba abantu bephume bonke nje bezihlayela phansi belwisa inkomo zabo. Kungena abanye abantu ngoba isystem lekhona lapho vele ku government ayisoze yancedisa umphakathi, incedisa nje kuyigroup okuncane kwabantu. Abantu abaningi behlupheka kuncedana ukuthi abantu abangu5 kukholisa abantu abangu2. Abanye laba babhekwe ngubani. Ulokunye ngakubuza phone.
Masukhangeleke ubona zani umjure engenzani? Wathwa akumtshele Nkomo ukuthi ayenzeni wathini?
Umama akazihlalele pha akumangalisi lokhu navela kungethusi baba ngoba ngabheka 1980 vele igovernment nale baba ithathela izaphi impahla kulala abantu ithatha okhasi arms bonke immigrant farm lana onesi aid bonke labana labo khami farm labana esihube laphana vele akulalutho bazovele besenza nje behlukumeza umphefumulo wabantu. Umama ngabe vele uyayiyeka usekhulile kadlela imali yakhe ngabele kehlukumeza labantu kabheke nje impilo yakhe nje ngabe le stress unless makukhona okwesaba ukuthi ezihlalele emzini wakhe okuyizikhundla lokhu kakuncedi. Kambe from 1980 babuzofika namhlanje umuntu right ngabele kusafuna ukubuyela khona phana kulani ukuzokunye futhi
so kodwa ke nxa usizwa wena ubona zani kuthiwa indaba kungazange kwenziwe i-by election esanda ukukhethwa phela kudala khona indaba kuhamba kanjani?
Ilizwe lanto iyakwazi ukuthi vele iranwa njengesiphaza mbe ngathi ishop ibhokisi maningi ama-by-election angayenziwanga vele lamhlanje lamanye ngaze yenziwe kuyafana nje ukuthi phela ukuthatha nje izibi sifake phakathi kwe-dustbin sithi ukudla ngoba akusincedi abantu ngazi betshonto umama kabuye ayeka ngoba vele ukathi usafuna nikazithathela ipentshela ngathi bamxotsha mayukuthi ikhampani right ethi mayikuxotshile abamnikeza ama-benefit akhe ezihlalela umama ekhaya ezela imali yakhe okuyisikhundla lokho uyazi kufana lokuthi mbe ukunikeza ukiti vele ungaboniyo ngoba ilizwi kakulincedi ngalutho.
Hawu enkomo baba sibonge kakhulu uphenduke phela ungasikhohlwa.
Hayi ngikhona baba ungathawula.
Yes, spoken Mr. Nkomo. So what Mr. Nkomo is saying is that, Mrs. Mjuru should just forget about, this kind of parliamentary election, by-election. So he says she has been in government since 1980. So why should she come back and, participate in these elections?
Yeah.
He doesn't see any reason. And then he says Zimbabwe is being run like a spaza shop. You know a spaza? Like a tuck shop. The guys that are ruling, according to him, are doing whatever they want. So that's a problem.
Let me go back to Mr. Pulu. Are you still on the line?
Yes.
Yes. Now, Mr. Pulu, of course, there are those who are saying we won't participate in the elections. But do you feel enough is being done to force ZANU-PF to reform? In terms of electoral reforms, that is.
The idea of forcing ZANU-PF to reform, has been agenda since before 2000, intensified after 2000, and in fact, those who have been pushing for that reform, that is civil society and opposition political parties, have managed to put in place a constitution. The current constitution is, an exhibit. It is a list of those reforms that, at least legal reforms that have been done. For example, the limited term is one of those reforms. Proportional representation is one of those reforms that have been put in place. So I think a lot has been done. Incredible work has been done. The fact that we are having this discussion right now, although we would love you to be in Harare when we have this discussion, is also evidence that there is a lot that we have not been able to change. But certainly it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And I think there's still a lot that must be changed. As long as I'm not talking to you from Harare or from Bulawayo, then the electoral playing field is still skewed in terms of the media. Those in the Mjulu camp, I think they would testify that, if someone is holding the strings, they can really do a lot of damage. And going into an election with this skewed situation would be very difficult. Look at the issue of the Registrar General, Tubai Mamdede. He is not supposed to be controlling the voters' roll. The law is clear. But he is unrepentant about it. He's still holding on to the voters' roll. The voters' roll is in shambles. ZANU-PF itself have admitted that there is basically no proper voters' roll. And yet, they are running, an election. They have admitted that they are ghost voters and all these irregularities. And so you can see that it is simply a circus for you to say that you are going to have a credible election. We now know that international observers have said that some of the elections in the past were a sham, and that was hidden. South Africa hid a report, and certainly we are saying that, however, political parties must then decide what to do. A general election is not the same as a by-election. If you make yourself a mockery of yourself leading up to a general election, where you know that you will lose, not because you don't have any support, but because of a number of factors which are skewed against you, it's a game that is predetermined, will certainly not be wise. The contradiction between, I have not heard of it yet, but if indeed it's there, between the Renewal people and the Welshman people, the MDC, certainly that contribution, if it is there, could be explained turned away by saying, look, these are two political parties that are still in the process of coming together. They still have separate structures. They still have the resolutions that they made even before they started talking about coming together. And certainly when they finally come together, they will have to come together, agree on the new positions that they will take. And I'm sure it's something that can be resolved. It's a difference in strategy. It's not a difference in principle.
Thank you
and,
so much.
You know, a great African statesman has said before that one can compromise over strategy, but one cannot compromise over principle.
That's true. That's true. Gibbs.
Yes, sizwe ke silomnumzana uMachingura osecingweni. Baba Machingura ungawatshona njani?
Ngiyatshona njani baba mnumzana?
Hayi sitshonile mfowethu. Kunjani lapho khona?
Hayi mina ngizesigodlweni ku-right.
Akusitshela ukuthi uthini ngodaba lolu uphose lakho khona.
Udaba lolu ngiyaluzwa. But what I'm thinking of ukuthi khathesi thina esiBhabha lapha. We are not ready for election. Sikhona lapha eHarare we are seeing things happening. And uyabona ukuthi kunzima. People can hardly make the ends meet. So ukuthi kube nama-elections, that's a general knowledge. Whenever there's a by-election, one or two, it's so costly. Abantu behlele ukuthi balime, behlele ukuthi benze just those basic things. And ukuthi sithi sibe nama-elections. I think as Zimbabweans, we are failing to put our priorities right. Yes, legally and whatever, we made the need to defend the by-election. But as a nation, what are we saying? Are we saying these by-elections at the moment? I have made a in as a nation good. There are certain priorities. There are certain areas where we should put our priorities so that Zimbabwe at least money has been put in land.
So ke wena ungathi kumele kwenziweni. So kukhulunywe phela okukhulunywe ngumongameli kumele kwenziwe. Akunjani?
Yeah, I want to the bad part of it is that even the opposition is so fragmented. You have to be voted. We have to the NDC teams Kuma Malok, renewal Kuma Malok, was member Kuma. So it's hard. Only even the opposition, but Kuma one voice goes on. But neither is the advantage. And that was one people. What if the viable talk and the great privilege the opposition in Zimbabwe? I just don't know what the problem is. It's different in the other countries. The opposition here is strong. And even the government of the day will take them seriously. Unlike Zimbabwe. So the best thing, and even everything I is Zimbabwe. You need to take our Zimbabwe from my election. Our Zimbabwe, they want jobs, they want they are always talking of bread and butter issues. So using the hours for our Zimbabwe.
Hayi sibongela kakhulu baba Machingura khona ngapho ke esigodlweni ungathina kusasa ungasikhohlwa phela.
Azuze because ngithi ngiyabona ukuthi ngicela ngizelela ukuthi it's so very Zimbabwe sevana weZimbabwe. Sure, and if you want to Zimbabwe yezimeza kubana election. Zimezi ngizakawanda baenda sasikushanda vanale Zimbabwe yezimeza vari kuda bayitagona kuisa ma priorities everywhere. So Maria yanga ifuna kuenda kuma elections and whatever. So itora toyitsakana kuti zvikoro nekuti so that upenyu hwevana veZimbabwe at least hurerukewo.
Thank you very much siyabonga kakhulu ke mnumzana Machingura ungathina kusasa. I think you heard him.
Yes, very clear. Very clear
indeed.
Mr. Mavinga, do you think the opposition and civic groups are pushing hard enough to ensure that there are reforms?
I think therein lies the problem for the opposition and civics in Zimbabwe, which is that really it is not enough to pronounce simply a boycott at that level. The nature of the ZANU-PF regime is that it requires proactive action that is escalated or of an escalating nature always, which means that they need to be shocked. This is really unexpected that the opposition would boycott these two constituencies. What the opposition needs to do is to raise the struggle several levels higher in terms of articulating the bread and butter issues for the ordinary Zimbabwean, in terms of mobilizing Zimbabweans, in terms of ensuring that there is discomfort in the camp of the regime, and in terms of ensuring that they are not just reacting to say, well, the president has announced March 27, and our reaction is that we will not participate. But to have a clear political program to mobilize people and to really become a political force on the ground, which really would confront ZANU-PF at every level. At the moment, I do not feel that we are at that level. I feel that really it is the politics of the opposition and civil society are a bit comfortable within the framework of the status quo and are letting ZANU-PF set the agenda to which they would then react. For what really is required, if you look at what has been happening in France, 1 million people marching on the streets, can we not do it in Zimbabwe? To really have a show of force on the ground and not just press statements to issue positions. This is what is happening in Zimbabwe, like what's happening in Nigeria, where people are really not bothered when thousands are massacred, but there is not enough political force to make a statement about those things. So it's about Zimbabweans rising up on the back of clear strategic political mobilization by the opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Mavinga. Gibbs.
And Mr. Ngwenya, I guess it's very good news to your ears that now it's minus 2 parties that are not going to take part in the by-elections. Maybe 5 more to go, right?
Yes, indeed. That would be very good news, not only to me, but to every citizen in the country, because what that means eventually is if there is no other opposing contestant, there will be no need to go for elections, that whoever will be nominated at the nomination court wins. So that would be indeed good news.
But without any kind of, opposition parties, you are also doomed as a party, right?
Yeah, but as you are aware, I think they've all made their calculations. There are a lot of sectors. These opposition parties are broke at the moment, and they will not be able to get resources to field candidates. And the other thing is, I think they've made their calculations. They know very well that they will lose dismally, even if they try to field candidates. So, in my view, I think the nomination court will ever be nominated in that court will become the eventual winner for those seats.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Pulu, if you may respond to that, he's saying the opposition is simply broke, too broke to field a candidate.
I think if I'm surveying what the opposition political parties are saying, they are simply saying, look, ZANU-PF has already won the elections. They're in power for the next 5 years. You've got a skewed electoral playing field with not enough reforms having been done. You go into these by-elections, which have been put in place, which have been picked simply because the people in ZANU-PF are squabbling. Do you want to join their squabble strategically? Do you want to spend your resources on such a battle? Or rather, would you want to do what Mr. Dewa Mavinga is saying? Get down on the ground, mobilize people around issues, and prepare for the general election. And prepare also to put pressure on ZANU-PF. Sufficient pressure to ensure that at least there's movement on ensuring that the voters' roll is put in place, ensuring that it is moved from this office, ensuring that, Zach has expressed surprise also that they've indicated before in a report that, the infrastructure that they had in the last election was not in such a good condition, particularly the voters' roll. And so with those admissions, certainly opposition is saying they'd rather focus on doing those things. And some of the things that we suggest they could do are in line with what Mr. Mavinga is saying. Focus on mobilizing the people, focus on putting pressure, come up with methods of putting pressure on the government, whether, in various means. I mean, we've done it before. We know the ways in which you can put pressure on the government to implement those reforms. So certainly, I don't think the issue is that opposition parties are broken, have no money, etc., etc. Even broke opposition parties have an entitlement to participate in elections. People in Zimbabwe will not be bribed in order to vote. But if you are used to a culture where you buy the electorate, certainly then maybe the opposition does not have such pockets. But we're not looking at an election where we have to buy anybody. The people of Zimbabwe know what they want.
Thank you, Mr. Pulu. Regatende kuvateereri vamoyo makadii? Aiwa, tiripo. Muri kuona sei nyaya yesarudzo yevamoyo?
Nyaya yesarudzo mubvunzo kupa ndinawo ndewekuti mai mujuru vakati vadzingwa vavari vice president uko vari vemupichi kuti
aiwa, ndo mubvunzo une wakawanda kuti zvanga zvichifambiswa sei kuti zvazoipa nhasi. Handiti ndo zvamuri kubvunza?
Ndo zvatiri kubvunza kuti kuva munhu angagova kunze vareplace sei ko mai mujuru vanga vasina kureplacewa wani.
Aiwa, tichabvunza magweta edu kuti vange vachitsanangura ipapo, asi vambenge vachitiwo zvatanga tichiverengawo hedu kuti hanzi vamugabe wanga watoresva ipapo vangadai vakazviita mukati memwedzi mitatu. Mai mujuru vanzi vaitwa vice president, asi vamwe vari kuti nyangwe izvo zvekuti vabviswe kukanganisa zvakare mutemo.
Zvongoratidza kuti zvinhu zvavo hazvina kujeka, zvine chitsotsi,
hazvina kumira zvakanaka. Ko munoona sei zviri kunzi neve-MDC hatidi kupinda musarudzo dzacho nyangwe dzikaitwa kusvika zvinhu zvavandudzwa munyaya dzezvebumbiro remutemo tichitarisa nyaya yesarudzo? Ndati muri kuona sei zviri kutaurwa nevanopikisa vana MDC nevamwe kuti hatipinde musarudzo dzacho kusvika vawandudza mitemo?
Vani raiti nekuti vanoziva kuti hapana chinobuda tsuro dzakarongwa kudhara.
Saka muri kutsigirana navo? Aiwa, tinotenda zvikuru vamoyo nekupinda muchirongwa chedu. Tinotenda zvikuru. Of course, Mr. Moyo is saying he's surprised that after all these months, suddenly it has dawned on some people that Mrs. Mjuru must be removed. And then he's also saying that he supports the stance by the opposition to boycott the elections. Gibbs.
Mr. Pulu, your take on this, again, on these opposition parties that are saying we're going to boycott and so forth. Are these parties not, running out of ideas?
Certainly not, Gibbs. After every season, in any
after Christmas, right?
Contestation, you must have strategic thinking. You can't just go jump into every by-election and ignore what is happening on the ground. Certainly, we all know that there's been an admission that the voters' rolls are in shambles. There's an admission that the voters' roll is not in the custody of VEC, it's in the custody of Mbede, which is unlawful, which is a key reform, that has been done in the Constitution. It hasn't been implemented. How do you say then you are going into an election under those circumstances? Why do you? Is it even an election when VEC admits, these, flaws that are there? And therefore, tell us first what you're going to do to fix those flaws, so that we can go into an election. And we also have to think of the fact that ZANU-PF has got 2/3 majority as we speak. They can, they're running the show. Those 2 seats are not going to make a difference. Do you want to spend your resources, in order to contest seats that you're not going to win because things are so skewed? But at the same time, do you want to join a ZANU-PF political fight, or rather, do you want to focus on the weaknesses that you had in the last election, the things that you can fix? And you know that these political parties have suffered various splits. Should you not be consolidating, your base? And should you not be thinking of strategies of how we are going to force reform so that you move forward? And I think this is what the political parties, opposing political parties, perhaps are focusing on doing.
So Mr. Pulu, Thank you so much. Unfortunately, time is not our best ally, but we want to thank our guests this evening, Mr. Pulu, human rights lawyer, Mr. Morris Ngwenya, political analyst and ZANU-PF activist, and also Dewa Mavinga, human rights lawyer. We also want to thank our callers, listeners, and those who sent us text messages. This is Blessing Zulu. Good night.
And I'm Tips Dube. Good night, Zimbabwe.